Hello. Let me share this real quick.
Oh shit. Oh, I'm back.
So we are still reading the book that we've been talking about, um, entitled "Becoming Married, Staying Married" by Marcus Small, and it is actually a really good book. It's very insightful. Prompts you to think um, and become more self aware, which is what we talked about last week. About yourself, about how you respond and in relationships and why you respond in certain ways. So it's definitely a good read. I think some chapters could be um, more in depth, but I get that, because he was trying to include so much in this one book that's probably impossible to do. I wouldn't mind seeing um, some of these chapters made into their own book, though, because I think that would be interesting. So this particular chapter for this week was about becoming mature. Uh, and it was taking responsibility for our deeds and actions. So there was a lot of good points that he made actually in this chapter with regards to marriages and relationships and everything else. Um, but I don't know what stood out to you the most.
Well, what stood out is how he keep repeating about God, and for me, every chapter is basically saying that everything you do in your relationship, marriage, has to be led by God, and I think a lot of times that I think that's what's missing. Period. People don't look to God to lead. And if you don't believe in God, that's your right. That's your your prerogative.
Mm-hmm.
However, but it, without God, everything fails. So it's just he's very repetitive in every session, every chapter. The sessions I'm talking about when he's speaking to people, saying how God, God this or God that, So that's the main thing that stood out for me. And however, I noticed at the end of the chapter, so I'm on that was something about the five. What was it 5 steps for what was
Yeah,
it?
but you were saying something before about something you disagree with while you
Oh,
were reading it. You were saying you disagree, but I didn't ask you about it then because I figured we'd talk about it now.
oh yeah, when he's when they said that what is it when he was talking about how your relationship you look your relationships is extensions of your parents or whatever, or you looking for something for your parents from your parents and your spouse, or something that your spouse should be doing, or you want something from your spouse that your parents have done, and
Or haven't.
I haven't done, and I disagree with that.
I don't know. Why you disagree with that?
Because I don't. For me, it's not true. I'll say that. I disagree with that for me, because I don't want you to do anything that my mother or father or because done. I don't.
He didn't say that. He said instinctively.
Well,
So he said instinctively, you look to your mate to pick up where your parents left off.
I don't.
If parents did certain things, or even if they didn't do certain things, so that we felt we were somehow cheated, we will expect our marriage relationship to fulfill those spaces. So I think if you look at it in the totality of what he's talking about, I think it's true. I've seen you do that. I've told you that before. That's not anything new.
Such as,
I've seen you do it though.
such as.
Because for you, and I can't remember
I have a great relationship with my mother. We're gonna get that out of here.
no, but I don't know in what aspect brought it up, but like you have this thing where um okay, well everybody likes to feel loved, right? But you have this thing where it's almost like I don't even amplify with you, like things that people would just do anyway are kind of amplified with you as far as how it makes you feel. and how it makes you feel loved. And I think that comes from childhood.
Well, if we're going to talk about,
Because that's what he's talking about. He's talking about things like that. He's talking even like if you feel like you didn't get some emotional things. And again, he said instinctively, so it's not something that's always conscious that we're doing.
Okay. So you're gonna say subconsciously, then okay, I don't think so, but I won't argue with that. But I don't. I was looking at it more as like your parents did this or your parents did that, so you expect your spouse to do it.
No. He wasn't talking like just about not stuff like that. But it's sometimes people, for example, some people felt like they didn't receive all their emotional needs from their parents. They may be particularly emotionally needy with their spouse. That's what he's talking about. That type of thing.
Okay, well, for me, I don't think that's true, but that's why I said that's why.
But I've seen you do it, so I think it is.
I mean, you talking about things subconsciously. Like I can't think of anything.
No, I know that, but I said what I'm saying is I brought it up to you before because I even said it. I was like, but I don't think that happens just in like marriages. I think it happens when you can do it with any relationship. Some people rely on their kids to provide certain emotional things for them that they shouldn't. And I've told you that before. And I've said, well, you kind of relying on that. That shouldn't be the case. Like, and I'm thinking, and to me, in my opinion, I'm not a counselor or anything. I would think that's where it's coming from. Like some of that is coming from childhood stuff.
Well, yeah, well, I can maybe. I don't want to. I can't debate or disagree with you on that, but I would think that it was, think it comes more because of the situations that I have had with my kids, and it makes me feel as though that if you're talking about the specific incidents with Bailey, it makes me feel as though that I'm doing something right when she does that, or for one to lay up under me, but. So it could be. It could be. I don't know, but I just I don't know.
Yeah, so that was interesting. But here's the thing. It's like this chapter kind of made me think about a bunch of stuff. So it made me think about a discussion that I had with Jermaine and even with my son actually last week when we were talking about how people marry their tolerance as opposed to their preference, and how someone was talking about Michael Eli and how he said that his wife isn't his type, but he's been with her for 11 years. And what really made me think about that was the story that this author talks about of Samson. And he was talking about how Samson's desire to want to be with Delilah, kind of just how that led to his demise, basically, because Samson died. But they were talking about how he was talking about how that led to his demise, because that's something that he wanted. And particularly, he said, let me see, because I marked it. When he was talking about once, and he said that we talked about Samson losing sight. It says chasing what you want without examining the consequences happens all the time. And that's when you think about it, it does. Like when you think about what you want and how that ties into actually to like a person's maybe their preference in the type of people that they date, or their preference in the type of people that they consider their type, it can lead to, without looking at the consequences of that, it can lead to adverse results that we never even intended to have to deal with. And so now I kind of get more, I'm understanding more when they say like, when Michael Eli said that his wife wasn't his type, right? I get that now, because maybe at some point, he realized in his maturity that what he wanted as far as the things that he wanted in women may have been those things that were not necessarily something that would equate over to them women even being good people. And that there would be consequences from that.
Well, yeah, because sometimes to add on to your point, like to the wants or whatever, you could want a man that's 6'3" or with all muscles, or a woman that has a big old whatever, or looks like this. And when you want that, it can lead you. Okay, so you get that person, and then that doesn't work out, and then you still have that same type or want, and then you keep going down that same path, and then you wonder why, or people wonder why they don't have a significant or substantial relationship, or can't maintain one.
Mm-hmm.
And it's to the point of what she said, those wants could get you in a lot of trouble.
Right.
So
definitely.
And that's funny because he actually said that.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, Heather, in that book, he talked about a guy that did that.
Yep.
He was talking about the example of a couple that he gave in the book. His mother, when he was young, always had him like he was like a second parent to his siblings. And he was saying that one of the results of that is that this guy didn't know how to function. He was immature functioning in an adult role, right? So his concept of how to love a person or the things that you should do to show love was kind of misconstrued because of that. So basically he ended up with a wife that he was always doing things for, because he figured in his immaturity, even as a grown man, because he still was mentally immature as far as knowing how to appropriately love someone. He thought that his showing love was by being at his wife's every beck and call, and it made him miserable because he was doing that.
Yeah, we had this discussion off of camera. Sometimes, and I posted this on my Facebook page years ago. Sometimes you could lose yourself. I always said, don't lose yourself trying to fit in somebody else's life. And that's what happens sometimes. You can lose yourself trying to make somebody else so happy that it makes you miserable. And that's not what I was saying. To be clear, that ain't what I was.
I get that.
So so I know of people that have done that. So it goes back to something I had put right here, where it says, unfortunately, in some newlywed couples, each tries to force fit their spouse into the ideal of what they want and expect of them to be, and that's what happens. And you never force yourself to be in somebody's life. So when you're supposed to, I'm just learning this. With the compromise and the self-awareness, like it's funny. I'm sorry, I'm bouncing around, but the chapters are going like, and the chronicle order that they're going in, every chapter relies on things from the other chapter behind it, from the previous chapter. But so it's you don't force yourself in nobody's life. You're supposed to compromise. Once you become self-aware, you understand things like that, and it's I don't know. I love this book.
Yeah, it's funny because Heather, I'm going to read the exact passage from there. Too. He says, because Danny was a child sometimes operating in a parent role, the interpretation of what his role was in a marriage got crossed. He would take instructions from his mother and operate as an adult. So when he got married, he continued the same practice, coming to understand being helpful was doing everything a woman told you to do. Danny interpreted happy wife, happy life, and operated in his relationship with his wife the same as he did in his relationship with his mother. So that just goes to show how that impacted him and how it continued to impact him in his relationship. So that's how he figured that's what you need. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to continue to operate in that way. So he hadn't gotten to the point where he was able to even mentally mature. His whole thing about being in a marriage, being in a relationship was about what he could do for a person.
Yeah.
Like, this makes me an adult because of what I'm doing for this person. And it's funny because the author kind of talks about maturity. And he said, yes, one aspect of maturity is being able to function as far as take on responsibilities, pay bills and everything else like an adult would. But we forget that another part of maturity is your emotional and mental maturity. Like, because you can be functioning as an adult in that way, as far as taking care of bills and everything, but still mentally be immature. I mean, think about the people who are in these marriages and relationship cheating. So I think they're very immature as far as emotionally.
Yep.
But yet a lot of them take care of their home. Like, they pay the bills. They do what they're supposed to do as far as husbands or wives. But then mentally and emotionally, they're very immature.
Well, that's what did I always say? It's of course, it's different to me. Maturity is maturity, but I say it's kind of different levels.
Mm-hmm.
I said a lot of reasons men cheat. When women be asking the question, why do men cheat? What did I tell you when we first met? They're sexually immature. Yeah. And that's what it boils down to. So yeah, that's ouch.
And it's funny too, because just like you saying, Heather, you can't rely on your spouse to pick up and fill the gaps that a person missed when they were, in childhood, or that puts a lot of burden. You're right, puts a lot of burden on your spouse, and it makes you set expectations that are sometimes rigid and not very fluid and very unforgiving if they can't uphold those expectations. And so another part that he was talking about was marriage as a contract as opposed to a covenant. And he was saying if we operate with it like it's a contract and it's very rigid, and these are the things that have to happen in order for us to survive this marriage, then that's different than operating as a covenant. When you operate as a covenant, yeah, you're going to have standards. There's nothing wrong with with a person having standards, or there isn't anything wrong with that. But you have to be able to, at some point, recognize when you need to be forgiven and give grace as God would.
So watch this. That's when, was it 2-3 chapters back when they were talking about the sending your ambassador itself.
Mm-hmm.
That's when that becomes dangerous, because when if a man or a woman, I'm just saying you as, because I'm a man, but if a woman is expecting, or her expectations, and she wants a guy to do this and do that for her, and when you send your ambassador self as a man and you're doing these things, mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. And you're doing these things, and then once, she's going to love it, this, that, and the third, and then once you become married or serious relationships and you cut it out, then that's when the problems start. Mm-hmm. So, like, I'm gonna go back to it again. All of these chapters, they're interacting with one another, and it's kind of cool.
They do, because a lot of times, matter of fact, when you say that, you're sending your ambassador self or your personal ambassador to portray or to live up to someone's expectations, whose expectations aren't based in the reality, whose expectations are faulty to begin with. So their expectations are faulty because of their childhood trauma, or because they dealt with different things growing up. They was a parent, second parent to their little sibling, or they didn't get love from their parents. So their expectations are faulty to begin with. And then you send your personal ambassador to try to fill in those gaps.
And fill them in temporarily.
They can fill them in temporarily, and then it blows up in your face because they're unrealistic. No one can sustain that. They're not even sustainable to be able to continue to do things like that person is expecting. So that's something else. And then the other aspect of it is that he talks about how when you're maturing, like people are always changing. And part of maturity is realizing that we don't stop maturing just because we reach a certain age, or we don't stop maturing and growing just because we get married, or we don't stop maturing and we don't stop learning just because we get out of school, right? We continue to learn things. So why do we think that we wouldn't continue to grow as a person, continue to change as a person, continue to have different opinions and change our opinions and perspectives about things as a person? And part of that maturity is recognizing that your partner is going to change, and you have to be able to accept that and acknowledge it. Now, I mean, I think it's totally different. Like if your partner going through a midlife crisis, they just start going out wilding out. That's totally different. That's not what we're talking about.
So I can't go to the club, baby, and just start.
So I keep telling him all the time how people give these snippets and then it'd be misleading. So nothing in here is suggesting, even with the fluid and being forgiven, is suggesting somebody's supposed to stick around for a partner that's abusing them, or a partner that's emotionally abusing them by cheating on them all the time. Like that's not what he's saying at all. Okay, so it's not that. It is not like, oh, well, my partner changed and all of a sudden we just like, he doesn't spend any time with me, or she doesn't spend any time, she always out. That's not what we're talking about either. But we're talking about like the natural course of someone maturing and becoming different as a person because they're maturing, not because they're deciding to go down an immature path.
And I also wonder how many, as I'm reading this, like it keeps saying newlywed couples, right? I would like to know, I mean, I don't know if there's any studies, but how many newlywed couples actually go through this, and how many, well, obviously it's a lot because of the divorce rate. So how many calls it quits, and then, or, once they get through those rough parts to figure out each other, I think there's a pot of gold on the other side of that, because It's like you started off with the honeymoon phase, as they say, everything is great, yada yada yada. You hit those rough patches, and you actually told me that, but that tests your love, or tests how much you really care about that person. And if the relationship is built on faulty pretenses anyway, I don't think those are the ones that don't make it through. Because once you make it through those rough parts, because even with us, what we're doing is learning one another. We're taking the time to learn one another more. So then those things or whatever the issues you may have, they're not going to be on the second half after you come through that learning process.
All right.
So then I think everything else, it'll be, I don't want to say smooth sailing, but a little bit easier. Of course, because you understand how to handle things when they come up now, what makes that person upset, how not to talk or speak to that person, and vice versa.
Right.
So all of those things are, I would like to know how many people actually make it through and keep going after that.
Right. I don't think a lot. Well, again, so that those are the same people who, when I was talking about it before, and I was saying how the people that once things, they don't have that butterfly feeling in their stomach anymore, they'd be like, "Yep, let me get up out of here," because they said that's actually what happens, because they're not even mature in how they're defining love.
Wow,
so
I was getting ready to say that.
If you're not mature in how you define love, and you don't understand that it may not be that you're going to have those type of butterfly feelings all the time, but that doesn't mean that you just jump up and go. That means that you work through that. People divorce because of those things.
Well, that's again, that's because of the relationship being built on false pretenses. Because it's definitely immaturity, because they don't understand what love demands. I've said that 1,000 times too. Mm-hmm. And I don't even think you can get to the process of understanding true love unless you're mature, because right. I said this 1,000 times. What I've learned is, if you cheat on somebody, you can sit there and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I love you, I love you, I love you," all you want to. But if you love them, you wouldn't have did it in the beginning. You wouldn't have put yourself in that position. Love don't allow you to disrespect somebody like that.
Right.
So
it's funny because how you bring that up. We were at the gym earlier today, right? And I always do my cardio first, and then I do my workout, like my lifting and everything after that. So I get on the cardio. There's this guy, like in the treadmill. There's a treadmill in between us, and he's in the treadmill, the next treadmill over. And the treadmill that's in between him and I, there's a girl standing on there. Now she's not even using the treadmill. She's just standing on the treadmill. She's talking to the guy. Then there's another girl standing in front of him talking, right? And they're just going on and he and laughing together and blah, 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 right? And I'm sitting here thinking, like, this girl took up a whole treadmill. These are the only ones that go up to 30 incline, and she's not even using it, right? She's just standing on there while the guy is trying to work out. But like their conversation, and I'll say it up front, like wasn't really talking about anything inappropriate, but it was like he was saying, well, when a person's 25, you got all these type of different, things that you're thinking about and blah, blah. And the girl was like, well, I'm 25 and blah, blah, blah. And I don't know. It's just the manner in which both of them were standing there talking to him while he's obviously trying to work out, but he's talking to him. And then what surprised me, though, what really caught my attention, because I was in the middle of doing something, I think trying to change my song or get my YouTube to work right. And he said, well, yeah, when me and my girl get married, blah, 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 blah. And so I'm sitting here like, well, what? Now I'm on that treadmill. I've stayed on my treadmill for a long time. The whole time I'm on this treadmill, these two girls are in his face talking to him. And you said people are put together or whatever. And he was a put together guy. So he wasn't a bad looking guy. He had nice body and everything else, I guess, which y'all would call nice body and stuff. But these girls, and I'm sitting here thinking, like, now I wonder if your girlfriend, your fiance will be okay with these two girls up in your face like this for a whole 30 minutes talking to you about their life or whatever. And it was just funny because I'm just like, now that's the type of situation where stuff, I'm not saying it will jump off, but what could lead to things that it shouldn't, right? Because actually when he finished, started packing his stuff up and started trying to walk away from the girl. The girl she got off the treadmill, followed him, and started walking. Then they ended up going down and that's the type of thing. I'm like, why is he even entertaining that?
Yeah, right.
Like, why there's no reason for him to be talking to them that long. It's like, you could tell they don't know each other. Like, so it's not like they were friends, but he's just having this whole conversation for 30 minutes with this girl.
And people, some people would say, well, he wasn't doing nothing but talking. But that's again, if you're talking about your future wife, then you don't put yourself in a situation like that, because I hate to say it, that we as men sometimes we think with the wrong head. And if I think I know you're talking about the girl in the brown who had them brown shorts on.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that's the other thing. Both of them were dressed in the type of attire that people talk about when people go to the gym.
Yeah. So yeah, but you could say it's just a friendly conversation, and I don't know the guy, so maybe it was just a friendly conversation, but you don't put yourself in that type of atmosphere. If you're like, hey, what do? You work out? I see you, blah 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 blah. Yeah, this is what I do, da 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 da. And that should be the gist of it.
Right.
Not let me show you, you could do it like this, and you know what I mean? Like that's.
And they wouldn't even. That's the thing. They wouldn't even talk about working out. They were saying something. She was saying something with I'm 25 and because he was saying I think he was trying to say how people who are 25 are kind of immature in their mindset, right? And immediately when he said that, because you could tell he didn't know what her age was, she's like, well, I'm 25 and I do think about buying a house and I do think about blah, blah, blah. Because he was saying he don't go out, don't go to clubs. And she's like, well, I don't either. So it was like, it was obvious that the girl was flirting with him. But I was just like, okay, why are you entertaining that?
Was that after he said he had a girl?
Yes. So it's those type of things that I'm just like, okay. But that's the immaturity of being immature, because you're not thinking about the consequences that could potentially cause. So this chapter, it was definitely good. They talked about he also talked about being a steward of your partner's emotions.
Yes. I had to learn how to do that.
Yeah, so he said, in essence, mature people understand that they are the stewards of their partner's emotions, in the sense that they care for them. They help them to grow and develop in the best way possible, and they understand the possibility and potential in them to do the same for them. So that's important, because I don't think a lot of people understand that they're the steward of their partner's emotions.
I would have never. I learned that with you. I would have never thought about it in that sense, but with me, it's if you care about somebody, why would you ever want them to cry, right? And it's even worse if you're the one making them cry because of something that you said. So, and I do this a lot. She says that I come off, I can come off in a rude or whatever way. So I try to watch how I say or what I say when I speak to her, because I don't ever want her to think that I'm saying something to intentionally hurt her feelings. Hell, I don't want to do anything unintentionally to hurt her feelings. So it's like, so I guess I am a steward of your feelings or whatever, but you just got to make sure, it goes back to what love demands again. You just got to make sure that how you speaking to someone, you're speaking, especially your partner, you're speaking with love and compassion.
Mm-hmm.
So he says something about even in an argument or a disagreement, something to that extent, which is the hardest thing for people in general to try to control, because our mouths become reckless when you're upset. And once you get that under control, those arguments don't no longer turn into arguments. They just turn into like heated debates.
Right. Exactly. But yeah, so that was definitely a key point. And he also said the main thing to understand about maturity is that it is a mindset. So maturity is definitely a mindset. It's something that you have to, I would say it's a mindset, even to the point where you should be practicing it all the time. You have to have your mindset, and you have to be, like you said, almost like be intentional about being mature and practicing it, because it's so easy to slip back into even old habits or immature ways, that it's easy to do that. So you have to be able to say, okay, no, I'm not speaking to my partner in the manner in which and that's part of maturity. Recognize and being able to stop yourself and say, yeah, I'm not speaking to them in the way in which I should be speaking to them as a mature person, or speaking to them as someone that I love. So let me change that.
Well, guess what? That goes back to what we talked about last week.
Yeah, self-awareness. Yep.
So and then it started off like that. Didn't it start off like self-awareness and maturity is hand in hand?
Yeah, it says self-awareness To be self-aware means you possess some level of maturity. And he says self-awareness is the process of understanding who you are, and maturity is the act of being responsible for who you are.
Yeah, interesting.
So that's definitely, yeah.
And so with the maturity aspect too, uh, it for me, I had to. We talked about this as well. I had to understand my actions was hurting a lot of people, and like I said, I realized that I had daughters, and these women that I was hurting, they were somebody's daughters as well. So that had a big bearing on me, and it helped me um, change and mature a little bit faster at a faster rate. I mean, I know it took me 40+ years, but I'm saying it's like in the span that I did. So it's definitely hand in hand.
It is. So he asked some questions at the end where he talks about there's a conversation he had between the couple he was counseling, and he asked about what happens when one spouse does everything the other wants and pays no attention to their own needs, and how can you avoid that? And so we did discuss that a little bit, but I was saying like a spouse becomes resentful and they become tired when they're always doing what the other spouse wants, but they're not at the same time fulfilling their own needs, right? I mean, they do become resentful, and it becomes more like a chore at that point.
And they become resentful because I think a lot of it has to do with losing yourself with that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So again, as I stated when we first started off, like that's exactly why they become resentful, because you lose yourself when you just doing whatever that person says over and over and over, or just to make them happy.
Mm-hmm.
Then you lose what potentially can make you happy, or your happiness, or it's sort of like my pancreas. Like you're not getting the nutrients out of the relationship that you need when you're just doing, it's just a one-way street like that.
Right.
So
exactly. And yes, and then he says, yeah, you can just turn it off and take it out for me, please. Sorry, y'all, I'm still cooking. But he also says, how can you avoid that? And I said, of course, by setting boundaries. So I've been reading a book on boundaries, and that's really the only way you can avoid that. You can avoid it by setting boundaries and communicating.
Communication, definitely.
Communicating, setting boundaries, and trying to understand each other and where each person is coming from, and why a person may. Because I don't think that guy in this chapter understood why his wife was even requesting things like that, or why her mindset was even like that. So part of that understanding, which he talks about in the previous chapter, part of your self-awareness and part of maturity is trying to understand why your partner is operating in the manner in which they're operating, because then you can be more forgiving.
Yeah.
In that instance, is because okay, well, it's just not me. This is something that happened because this is how she grew up. And yes, we need to work through it, but I know it's not just directed at me and that person just being, what I'm saying, mean towards me or like that towards me. So yeah.
So it has to the communication aspect is really, for me, is the big one. I think that's how you don't let that happen. Like, hey, this is making me feel away. Okay, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, but I'm not, I need this from you. You know what I mean? Like, that's a big thing. And sometimes you don't say, and I think women do that more than men. You'll do everything for your man or your husband or whatever, and then he's not giving you what you need to thrive in the relationship. But then a lot of times you guys don't speak up, and then, if guys do it as well, maybe, I guess, but a lot of times don't speak up, and then that actually is when the resentment starts as well, because you expect them to know that they're not doing something, or they are doing, you know what I mean? So and it's like, hey, look at me, I'm doing you're not taking care of my needs or whatever, and I'm doing yada yada. So like, right. It's like, why they don't know I need da da da. So that's where the communication aspect of why I say the communication aspect of it could hint stop that, right? Help stop it, slow it down, hinder it. So
And one of the things he talks about is the reality of mature love is not looking at what you will get, but understanding your commitment to give. And I think one of the things that hinder a lot of people today, especially today, is you have, just like I talked about those snippets earlier today, you have all these people on the internet and social media saying, this is what you should do. This is what okay, you can't tell, first of all, you can't tell people what they should do in their own relationship, right? People's relationships are for them to define for themselves. But if a person is strictly doing stuff or expecting someone to do something for them, without understanding that this person, if they're engaging in a behavior, is because of their love for you and not because of an obligation to you, then that becomes like a chore to people. Both people get resentful because the person that's doing it feels like they're being taken for granted now. And then the person that wants to receive that all the time feels like if the person stops doing it, now all of a sudden they don't love them, or now all of a sudden they disrespecting them, which is why I've never subscribed to that. You know how the someone be like, oh, you have to, as a woman, you should be fixing your man plate. Don't ever let him leave the house hungry. Okay, of course. Okay, well, I won't let my kids leave the house hungry either. Like, if you love someone, you're not going to have them out there hungry. You will fix their plate. But when you start making it sound like this is what you have to do, this is a chore that you have to do, because that's something totally different.
So here's the thing, right? And with that, about those snippets and stuff, women and men, and of course you're gonna find stuff in that you agree with, right? But everybody is different, because some of the things that the women be saying, that how to keep a man if you do da 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 da, that'll be some of the shit that runs me, or stuff that runs me off. Same thing with the men. One of them I seen, the guy was the one with the video, when they showed the two different wedding things.
Oh yeah,
right, the obey thing and this, that, and the third. Like, I don't need a woman. I don't need you to submit how the average man would think of submission.
Right.
And then and I think in that, a lot of men don't understand that you have to submit to your wife as well. So it's a compromise, and it's a two-way street that both of you guys have to be on. So, but with those snippets, every man is different. Every man wants something different out of a woman. Every woman wants something different out of a man. What she needs, to what she gives me, another woman could offer something totally different that I don't want, but it'd be good for another man, and vice versa. So, like, some women need financial support, or want financial support, or want their men to have yada yada yada. That's their right. But you can't say that's how you keep a woman, by taking care of her and paying her bills, because she had 8 kids before me and was doing it before me, and don't need me in that aspect. So it's like another woman that may have 2 kids could need a man to just do everything for her financially. So, like, you can't say that. Like, those snippets are very misleading.
They are,
because everybody is different.
They definitely are. So then when we talk about the 5, he gave us 5 ways to operate more maturely in a relationship. So he did say for us to discuss which ones are easy for us and which ones are difficult for us as a couple. But no, number 1 is consider your partner's feelings. Is that easy or difficult for us?
Well, for me, it was difficult, because starting off, because I wasn't mature. So it was like, if I say something, I said it, didn't understand the repercussions of how it make you feel. Didn't really care, because I was angry. All I cared about was me and how I was feeling at that particular time. So what I said hurt you, then da da da. The deeper I fell in love with you, the more I realized that the things I was saying, and I was listening to you, was hurting you, or certain things that I said. Let me say it like that. I'm making it sound like I'm saying shit all the time. But certain things that I would say, shut up. So certain things that I was saying. So realizing that, again, I don't want to hurt my wife's feelings. I don't want my wife crying because of something I did. It became easier. So it's easy for me now. Coming from where I was, it was very difficult starting off.
Right.
So,
and that's not to say that there's perfection in that area. But I will say that I think as far as considering partners' feelings, Jermaine is probably more mature than I am in that area, because I still have to go back and say I'll recognize it, but then I'll say in my mind, oh, I need to go back and explain this to him, because I don't want him to think that I meant it this way, or I don't want him to think that I missed that this is what happened. Like I got it. So, and I don't do it like, so he's more of a proactive as far as considering feelings. Like he'll use that and kind of be mindful about what he says or that sort of thing. I'm more of a reactive person where if something happens, like something happened the other day and it was something said and I heard it, and then my thought was I need to go back and correct that, but I didn't. And he brought it up, but I was trying to tell him, like, he probably don't believe me, but I was telling him like, no, I heard it. And my intention was to go back and correct that, because I thought about you when that happened, but I'm not as proactive with it as he is. So I would say that he's probably more mature in that area than I am.
Well, and it's also more and that's where we have to give ourselves credit too, because it's more of us also learning how to interact with when situations like that happen, and understanding how we are, right? Like you said, like, because even when you said, "Hey, no, I heard it, I was going da da da." Okay, I believe you. I mean, I do believe you. I know who you are. Right. So you know what I mean. But if you would have took a earlier version of us, it wouldn't have been as smooth, if that makes sense. Yeah. So it's but in the reason I'm, what do you call it, proactive? Mm-hmm. The reason I'm proactive or whatever, because I was so quick to normally say things, and then she always tells me that it's the way you say it, and you can say something this way. So, and I've always been told that my whole life. So I have to actually think about it first. So, and sometimes it still comes out messed up, but she understands that the things that I say. I'll give you a prime example. One day we was coming down the road and we were talking about something, and it was a debate, and it turned into an argument because I said this right here. I said, F you, but F you, I'd rather yada, 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 yada. But I didn't mean it like F you. I meant it like, nah, forget that. Like, it's like this, that, and the third. So I had to explain that to her like that. And I, becoming self-aware, I try to refrain from doing that. But if I do slip up and do it, she understands what it means. So, that's it. I don't know. I lost my train of thought.
No, that's good. And then number 2, he's talking about know how to talk to your spouse.
That's learning.
Make sure that when you find yourself in conflict, you're not trying to do damage to a person emotionally. Find ways to get your point across as reasonably as possible. Try to work on eliminating temper tantrums. So, as a couple,
really had a temper tantrum. So we never really had
that. But I think as a couple, that was an area we struggled with a lot. Yeah. I think we've gotten way better with it. Sometimes we do struggle. That's why I was talking about the maturity, immature. It's so easy to kind of revert back to stuff, especially if you don't consider it a mindset. It is a mindset, and like I said, it's something that has to be practiced. Like, you just don't.
Especially when you're used to, because I didn't know
operate a certain way.
Yeah, I didn't know she pops off like she pops off. Like whoa. But
kept telling my Aries, but he didn't listen.
Yeah, whatever. And I know I popped off. So you got, like, y'all have to understand, if I didn't know how her temper was, and she didn't know how our first 8 months, man, we were traveling, doing everything in the world. All we doing laughing, and trying to get pregnant. So it was like whatever. Then when reality set in, and first time I seen her get mad, and the first time she only seen me get mad once. She only seen me really.
No, let me be more than once. But go ahead.
Okay, anyway, so it's like something had to give there, because that was like a truck going, 18-wheeler going 100 miles an hour into a brick wall. Like, that was self-destruction if we were gonna make it. And I think that it was a process, and we got through it. And we're still learning today. I mean, to this day, and I think that's important too. You always gonna learn. Like, you're gonna continue. Like you said, people continuously change. with those changes, I think you continuously learn how to operate within your relationship to make it successful.
You do.
So
You definitely do. So that was there. We've got, like I said, we've gotten way better with that.
yeah, so we're not perfect.
Yeah, I had to keep explaining something. Like, I'm one of the people that people will say, like he said, my anger is explosive, right? But that adage about a person say how they really feel when that's not me at all. Like, I say what I think is gonna hurt you when I'm angry. It could be like the furthest thing from the truth about what I think. But if I know that you had an issue with something bothering you, that's what I'm gonna say. So he said I don't fight fair. It's probably true somewhat, but like I said, we've gotten way better.
But so here's the thing with that as well, and there's a lot of people that do that as well. I was one of them. Like, we got into an argument. I forgot what it was about, and she did exactly what she said. And I told her, I said, look, man, if we gonna make it, you gotta understand that I'm what? What I tell you, I'm not what?
Your enemy.
Yeah, well, I'm not your enemy. I'm not the average dude on the street. And for me too, like I'm not gonna talk to. Yeah, I'm your husband. I'm not. Like yeah, that. Right.
And on the street.
Exactly. And the same thing goes with her. Like, I understand. I have to understand, and I do understand that that's my wife. That ain't somebody that I'm just, been dating, or even if we would. Well, still don't make it right. But if she was my girlfriend, right, she still deserves. I can't even say that, so never mind. But that's just not somebody off the street. We're not somebody off the street, and it goes back to something else I heard. Always understand that whenever there's a problem, you two are not the problem. Whatever the problem is the problem. So it's attacking the problem
against. Yep.
So.
Yep. So number 3 was learn how to compromise. I don't think we struggle a whole lot with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
I don't want to talk about it.
I think he does a lot. I
don't think we struggle with compromising. You made a point to me last time. This is crazy. Sidebar real quick. We sat in front of the UPS and talked about compromising and things for 2 hours. I'm talking about 2 hours, and UPS is like a mile up the street from my house. But anyway, so you had said something that day about compromising. And I think what's important is sometimes people think certain compromises are, like you said, more than somebody else compromised. So that's a issue that we have came to grips with and worked on and working on too, as far as the compromise. I don't think it's hard for her to compromise, and I don't think, I know it ain't hard for me to compromise. I've compromised and I don't even agree with stuff.
I think it's a delicate balance when it comes to compromising, and I think that's something that needs to be pointed out. So that's where the difficulty lies. So the difficulty lies in, you don't want to have to compromise to the point where, like you say, it's only one person compromising all the time, or even if it's even that. Okay, because you can have people, for example, right, who feel like their background for whatever reason was just so jacked up that if their partner, whether it's male or female, is leading them or is suggesting things, they're more apt to agree with them because they like, it's almost like what you were saying, because they're still like unsure about, or they figure, okay, this person, they came from a better background, they probably know what they're talking about, I'm gonna go, or they're more unsure about themselves and how their past maybe have impacted their decision making and everything else, right? So that's one aspect of it. And in some cases that's fine, because some cases it is true. Like it may mean that a person is in that particular area need to maybe depend on their spouse. You're supposed to be able to depend on your spouse for stuff like that and not fear that they're going to take advantage of it, right? But I think what the problem becomes when you compromise to the point that you're starting to you feel like you're totally not yourself. Like you're not the essence of who you're supposed to be at the core. Like you completely had to change your core. And I guess the only example I can give are extreme ones. So if you're with someone and they're they're into some things sexually that's just totally against what you even believe in. Like you don't believe in any of that. You don't believe in having sex with animals, and that's what they do, right? I'm just such a good string. And when it's to the point where you feel like, oh well, dang, I have to go and have sex with animals because that's what they want, and that's gonna make you feel that a certain way, then no, that's not the type of compromise we're talking about. I'm sorry, I couldn't think of nothing else. I had to go to the extreme. I mean, but what I'm saying is that
more than extreme.
What I'm saying is that it's not a bad thing to change. It's not a bad thing to be in a relationship with somebody that ignites you to change, right? Because of that person and because of the things that you learn from them that pushes you or prompts you to change. That's not bad. But when you're changing because it's more like, for example, response to an abusive situation, like when I was in, and that's causing you to change, that's not the type of compromising we're talking about. So I'm saying when it's a change that you become a person that you don't like, put it that way. When you become a person that you don't like, when you become a person that is not a betterment for yourself and not a betterment for your relationship, that's not the type of compromising we're talking about.
Yeah, because with even talking about the compromise and the things that I had, what you have to do when you compromise is understand is what you're giving up. How is that going to hurt your relationship or hurt you? Right? Like we got into a debate today, and at the end of the day, certain things that we talk about, it doesn't affect our relationship. It's not a personal something that affect our relationship. So you have to learn how to compromise on things. What am I trying to say here? How am I trying to say it? If it doesn't affect you personally or affect your relationship in a negative way, mm-hmm. the compromise is a lot easier. Mm-hmm. Like that. So that's basically what I'm trying to say.
Right.
So compromising is really not that hard because it's not going to be detrimental to yourself. So that and I think that's, you said all that to say, we both said all that to say that as long as it's not detrimental to yourself or your mental aspect, it shouldn't be that hard of a compromise.
Right. And then it's always, learning that, there may just be some things that you can't compromise on, and that's fine too.
And he said that.
But you just you do make the effort, and so it's something that you consider, and in doing that, you consider your spouse's, of course, feelings in that whole compromising. But the fourth one was want what's best for your relationship. And I think he talked about that before too, previously. But at the end of the day, if your goal is forever, and your goal is, okay, we need to do whatever is best for our marriage, we need to do whatever is best for us as a unit, then that's different. That allows a person to say, like, okay, well, he's not my enemy, or she's not my enemy, or he's not someone off the street, and she's not someone off the street. Because at the end of the day, we know whatever the dispute is, or whatever the disagreement is about, the goal is to make our relationship work, or to do what's best for our relationship, or what's the most healthy for our relationship.
So, and what happens is this, right? When you, it was easy for me to really come compromising is this. Like, I use the argument, and I think I said this like when we first started doing this. When I normally, I wear my ring in anyway.
In the car.
Okay. Normally, like when I get upset or we have a disagreement or whatever, I always will put my ring on, because I don't really like wearing rings, but I always put my ring on to let her know that, hey, look, I'm still here, I still love you. And what that ring, I don't know if I told you this, but what I realized is what the ring really meant for me at that particular moment is that, okay, I'm going through everything with you, right? Mm-hmm. So at that particular time, going to Iowa, and that was a 16-hour ride. I was mad for like 4.5 hours. And with me being mad, I had to think, why did I fall in love with her? And with that ring on, I kept touching it. And with that ring on, it just made me realize that, forever is the goal. So at that point, when you have that in your head, and when you believe that and you want that, then that also makes compromising a lot easier.
Right. Yeah.
Unless she started talking about she want to go sleep with a man and I can sleep with another woman or something like that, we can compromise that way. Like now we going our separate ways.
Yeah, I wouldn't agree to anything like that.
You can't have a cheat time.
No,
one cheat
no
a year.
cheat pass. That's why I can see that's I'm the one person. You can't have me no poly, no threesomes, no nothing. Because I'm the type of person I'd be like, no, oh no, he enjoying that too much. Let me beat her ass. I mean, that's just how I am.
Yeah,
it would never work. It never work. But the fifth one was let your spouse be your spouse, and I think that's the one. I don't think we've had a lot of difficulty with that in that area.
You had more difficult with me than I had with you.
Hmm?
You had more difficult with me than I had
with him, because there's just some things that he has this idea in his head, and that comes from childhood stuff too, though. This idea in his head about I don't know, like what you're supposed to be, and I keep trying to tell him like, no, that's not. It's not what we need. It's not what I need. This is like you're my spouse. Like, stop acting like we're supposed to operate in a silo, because that's not.
Yeah, well, hey, buddy.
You know. So he has had more difficulty than I am. My difficulty has been understanding why he's like that and why he can't seem to understand that he doesn't have to be like that.
Because I'm a hood.
So anyway, but no, this was definitely a good chapter. It was an eye opener. The next chapter is on about becoming flexible and becoming communicators, which I think is going to be definitely interesting. One of the things though he talks about is creating a new storyline and new expectations. That's what I wanted to ask you, because he talks about creating new expectations, and he talks about creating a new storyline with your spouse. So he's saying instead of going into your marriage, and he hinted on this in the other chapters too. He talks a lot about you come in as individuals, but you're supposed to unite as one, and now as one, you're supposed to create all new expectations. I'm not really sure how you do that. How you create new expectations. I get the storyline part, but I'm not sure how you create new expectations.
Well, I think once you, because if your expectations are coming into it is one way, right? Meaning, like, say I'm gonna get like you. I'm gonna go to the screen. Say you like your feet rubbed, your ears licked on, and your hair pulled every night before you go to sleep, and your partner's not into it, right? Mm-hmm. That's something that you had done prior, or you liked prior, this, that, and the third. Say I like my butt thumped, my toes sucked, and my head smacked, and you not into that. So you just erase all of that. And then as you become one and grow as one, then you may like for me to kiss you on your forehead and give you a hug every night now. So that'll be an expectation that you create, that you created from within the marriage or the relationship.
Okay, so I get it. Because so it'd be like the expectation of you always kissing me in the morning.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that was something that I didn't have. I never had. So that's a new expectation that we've probably created for each other, is to get the kiss. Because he'll say like, "You didn't give me my kiss."
Right.
Be like, "I know you one that started it. That was you." But I saw it. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
So I mean, okay. and which is crazy. So we have to. That's interesting. Now, what I would ask is how many of expectations, like how do you come up with it? You know what I mean?
I think it just happened organically, though. Okay. Now, the more I think about it, because now that you just said that, and I talk about like you kissing me in the morning, I think sometimes, because when we become attuned to our spouse and we just know, like I know now, there's to expect certain things from you because I know you now. You get what I'm saying? And you know now to expect certain things from me because you know me now. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that does. Yeah, that was very interesting. But anyway, that was a good chapter. It was definitely good. This book has been helpful. And
it makes you look at yourself to an extent.
It does.
And yourself, because certain things, and I can't tell you right now, one in particular, but certain things that has been said in the book, would have never thought about.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it kind of helps in marriages in general. I'm kind of glad you said let's do this though,
Mm-hmm.
because just make you think about things that you don't even think about, or things that didn't happen, and you get to look at it from somebody else. Like, for instance, what I noticed as well, that was repetitive throughout the chapters. Every time he has a counseling session,
Mm-hmm.
it's always the guy was like, "Well, it's not that big of a deal,"
Right.
right? So those are things that has obviously that men always say,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not that big of a deal. It's not that big of a
Mm-hmm.
deal. I don't know why she's acting like that. It's not that big of a deal.
Mm-hmm.
So I just let you see that, because if you hear something, I can hear something from you,
Mm-hmm.
and like, okay, yeah, whatever, whatever. And then, when you hear it from somebody else, now it's, it
That does make
becomes,
sense.
you know what I mean? So,
And I think, yeah, you're right. Both people have a tendency to do that a lot. Because he even talks about that, like, don't say something's not that big of a deal because or like, no, he said don't say like your spouse will get over it, because he said you'd be amazed at the things people hold on to.
yeah.
And that's true. But that's even for ourselves. I think when we don't communicate about the things that are bothering us, we're setting ourselves up for failure in the matter of saying, oh, well, I'm not even going to mention it because I'll get over it, or blah, blah. But then it's one of the first things we bring it up when something else happens. So even from the person who feels a certain way about things, it's important to be able to communicate that with your spouse and say, you know what, even if it's like I don't want to try to make a big deal of it, that's how this made me feel, because at least then you're resolving it and you're not just throwing it up in your spouse 5 months later and your spouse didn't even know that it made you feel a kind of way. Mm-hmm. So that's important on both, and when you look at it from both sides. So
I wonder if people be looking at me thinking that I look like Mike Tyson in the Robin Givens interview.
Really?
Yeah, because they say Mike Tyson looked like he was just the unhappiest, craziest nigga in the world. So I'm sitting here looking like this.
You be looking like that. You be talking.
No.
He was talking like he was drugged in some interview too. They say he's on some meds or something. But anyway, so that was interesting. It definitely helpful for your relationship, but also helpful when you get a better view or a more understanding of things that's going on in the world and the relationships in the world and everything. And even with with the whole Will Smith and Jada Pinkett stuff. I mean, all that, some of the stuff in here made me think like, I wonder if that's what's going on with them.
No, Jada just needs some medicine. Something.
I don't know. I think it's funny because the one thing that they said Will came out and said the other day is something I can relate to if it's true. Like I don't know. Some people are saying, oh well, Will's a narcissist and it's actually been him that's been doing it. Now Jada's speaking her truth, and other people saying Jada's a narcissist. So it's crazy. The thing is, none of us have that in-depth of a look into their lives to know who is doing what to whom. But I do know that one thing, that when Will talked about how they say he came out the other day and he said something about he didn't realize, I'm paraphrasing, so don't quote me, but something about he didn't realize maybe how much hurt Jada was going through, or how much pain, or how much, how she felt her loneliness. And the only thing I want to say about that, like I said, I don't know if he's telling the truth, she's telling the truth, but that tends to happen a lot in marriages though. There are a lot of instances where you get so caught up in your own thing that you do not see your spouse, or you stop seeing your spouse. You stop paying attention to your spouse and noticing when they're miserable, or noticing when they're unhappy, or you stop noticing when they're acting in a way that's not like themselves anymore. So that is, I mean, in that respect, what he said, if that's true, I can see how that would have happened, because that happens a lot. A lot of times we get so busy, we get caught up in our own stuff, caught up in our own mental distractions, caught up in our own, what's going on in our individual siloed lives, not realizing that it's impacting our spouse too, and then we just don't pay attention. We don't, and then we start.
You can be there and not be there.
Yeah,
I did
physically
that.
present and not emotionally or mentally present.
I've been there before. I've known people like that,
and that happens. It happens a lot. So, anyway, I'm hungry and I gotta eat before, so I can eat. Let's see, dang it, it's 9:43.
Yep, I'm about to go to
So
work.
tomorrow that means I can't eat till a long time. Try. Maybe I might start my fast tomorrow. That way I ain't gotta be up all night. But anyway, so that was the live for today. Next week again is about becoming flexible and better communicators, and I think that's going to be really interesting.
I'm flexible. See yeah. No.
All right. So have a great night, everyone.
Peace, love, and Afro Grease.
Be blessed.
Oh, I got pee.